Coach Meyer didn't have the greatest time in the NFL as well.
I agree. Urban Meyer didn't have the greatest NFL run.
Michigan's going to beat Iowa. Iowa can't score points.
My gut's telling me that everything we think we know about the playoff is going to change after this weekend.
I just don't know yet because Alabama now.
I'm here to know for both of us. That will definitely happen.
All right, so now we have a committee member in the chat.
Predict it for me, 5-0. What game will have the craziness that leads to a sequence of who gets in and who's left out that we don't see coming right now as we have this conversation?
So I've really been thinking about this, and I'm going to try my most unbiased way of telling you what the Final Four is going to be.
You know, despite what some people might assume, this is not a Pittsburgh Steelers appreciation podcast, Ryan Shazier.
Yeah, that's why we're not going to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers having 400 yards without their old OC and with the new one.
Well, truth be told, I think we will talk about it a little bit. Either way, from Wondery, I'm Dave Damashek.
And I'm Ryan Shazier, and this is Gridiron Gut Check.
Welcome to Gridiron Gut Check. Every week, I'm talking ball with two-time Pro Bowler, Steelers legend, and former Buckeye, Ryan Shazier. Shazier, you ready to give my takes a gut check from a player's POV?
Yeah, I love telling you how I think and feel about some of the topics that you talk about. So, hey, I'm looking forward to it.
I'm so glad to hear that, Shazier, because as it turns out, there was a huge game played just last Saturday in Ann Arbor, and a lot of people are saying Michigan out-physicaled Ohio State for the third year in a row. For a lot of people in Columbus, that's bad news because the game is the one game that matters all season long. Ryan Day's days should be numbered. How say you, 5-0?
To me, honestly, this is a very hard topic because I was one of the players that's lost to the team of North Michigan, and I also have 2 wins versus them. So I understand how important it is to win that game and how stressful and how daunting it can be when people are upset that you're losing that game on a consistent basis. But when it comes to Ryan Day, he is like 40 or 30-0 in his last 3 years besides playing a team up north. So to me, I understand that it's very difficult. We got to win that game, but the people saying that they got out physical, no. If you really watch the game through the whole totality of the game, the rushing numbers were very even. At the end of the game, they ended up with, I think, 30 or 40 more rushing yards, but we ended up passing the ball because at the end, it was the end of the game. But they beat us off of turnovers. They created turnovers and they gave themselves the ball in plus territory for they can score touchdowns, and then they turned over the ball on the most important drive of the game. So Ryan Day is a great coach, but I don't think that you can fire him. I don't feel that you should fire him because of this situation. Versus everybody else, he's a winner. And unfortunately, he has lost versus a team up north. But there's not many coaches, or if any coaches, that are better than Ryan Day that's available in college football right now.
Well, available is the key word you dropped in that last sentence, but he's not as good a coach, it would appear, as Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh was physically not even in the stadium, and he still took care of Ryan Day. That's got to spook Day supporters.
He's also beat.
You can
he's
talk
also
all
beat
you
him
want.
as well. He's also beat. He also beat John Harbaugh as well, and John Harbaugh ran away from him as well. But it's all good. It's all good.
Listen, all valid, and the winning ways at that school are great, but the standard, as you may know, is awfully high, and you can, in a conference that really comes down to most seasons, a 2-horse race, it does matter if you can beat the other horse in that race. Penn State, Iowa, whatever, they have their years, but you know what I'm saying. And so if you are losing that game head-to-head, ask Lloyd Carr about it. That it is a black mark that's hard to to rub off if you are an Ohio State supporter at this point. I don't think they're going to move on from Ryan Day because of what you said. There's a lack of better options apparently available right now. But by the way, the irony of ironies is I think the rival who just beat Ohio State is about to begin its coaching search, because I don't think Jim Harbaugh is going to be there after the national championship tournament is played out.
So before we go to the next topic, I want to ask you about that since you just brought that up. So do you think with him getting suspended, he's going to get suspended by the NCAA. With him getting suspended and him leaving, do you think Sherrone Moore becomes their coach?
You know, I'm sure there will be a groundswell of support for that given the results of him on the sideline and the crocodile tears for Jim Harbaugh, who was suspended by his own bad deeds, all of that. Maybe I would imagine that the boosters will want to do a more fulsome search before they turn the gig over to one of the coordinators. But I do think that the only way I imagine Jim Harbaugh, as I try to psychoanalyze this weirdo from a distance, is that he could dig his heels in because people are telling him he has to go. I think if it's up to him, he wants to get back to the pro ranks. That's a dirty little secret. Correct me if I'm wrong, Shazier.
He's going to get suspended.
Most college coaches would like to ascend to the NFL. Most of those guys, unless they understand that their style of coaching is to more or less psychologically bully 19-year-olds, and they know that wouldn't work on 28-year-old millionaires, most guys want to get out of college and go to the NFL. And I think Jim Harbaugh wants to win at the highest level still.
Yeah, most guys do want to go to the NFL. Most guys do want the opportunity to coach at the highest level, say that they're one of the best coaches. But like you said, there are a lot of coaches that didn't perform as well in the NFL and they're still in college. Matt Rule, he's back in college. When you think about Nick Saban, possibly the greatest or one of the greatest coaches of all time. He's back in college. Coach Meyer didn't have the greatest time in the NFL as well.
I agree. Urban Meyer didn't have the greatest NFL run.
You know, so some people are better in college because of just their style, but John has made it to the Super Bowl with his style of play. And the thing that's so crazy is, if he leaves, some of the teams that's going to be available to him are actually solid teams. Like the Chargers might be available, the Bears might be available, the Raiders might be available. Those are teams that have a lot of talent that he can go and make some serious noise with immediately.
I noticed you didn't mention the Carolina Panthers as a good option for him or anyone else out there.
A good. All right. He can go there, but if he's a coach and. Because if you think of all the coaches, the best coach that might be available is Ben Johnson. That everybody says is Ben Johnson. But the one that's better than him is John Harbaugh. Like John is probably the top coach that's available out of all the college and pro. Yeah, Jim.
John has a gig, but if he loses again, if he doesn't win a playoff game with Lamar Jackson, I wouldn't be surprised if people start getting scutchy already in Baltimore.
But let me say this, Jim. Their names are so close and they look alike to me. It's my fault. Jim, he's the top coach, but John is also a top coach in the NFL. But Jim is the top coach, I would say, available for college and pro right now.
All right. Jim, I'm pretty sure, is going to be coaching the Wolverines unless he gets suspended again. Either way, that's one of a number of big-time ball games on championship week in college football. My gut's telling me that everything we think we know about the playoff is going to change after this weekend. Everybody thinks it's going to go chalk. I don't know exactly where it won't. But I know I've been watching college football long enough to know that there will be some upset that upsets the entire cart that we have assumed is going to provide us with our Final Four. So go ahead, predict it for me, 5-0. What game will have the craziness that leads to a sequence of who gets in and who's left out that we don't see coming right now as we have this conversation?
So I've really been thinking about this, and I'm going to try my most unbiased way of telling you what the Final Four is going to be. This is very. Right.
But let me just say, don't do the ridiculous thing. No, don't say the ridiculous one.
I just think and feel that this is going to happen. Georgia is going to go in. They're going to beat Alabama. I just think they're going to beat Alabama. They're a better team.
That's the biggest one. If Alabama knocks off Georgia, that's the thing that really would flip everything upside down.
I think it would flip everything upside down, but Georgia's a lock. I think they're a lock. So then Michigan, they're going to beat Iowa. If Michigan lose, I still think that Michigan is a lock. In my opinion. But I think, so I don't know, but I still think they're a lot. So, but Michigan's going to beat Iowa. Iowa can't score points. And Michigan has the number one defense. And then you're going against a team that can't score points. So I don't see that. So this is where I think that This is where I don't know what's going to happen. I think Washington is going to get in. And then I think Florida State is going to lose. And I think Texas is going to lose. And then that puts Ohio State back in there. I think that's the
You
most.
have Washington. So what you're saying is you have Washington beating Oregon. By the way, the Huskies are a massive underdog against the team that they already beat. Washington could run the table in a Pac-12 that has been mighty, arguably the best conference in college football in 2023. They could run the regular season table and get kicked out. If Bama beats Georgia, then they would definitely send both SEC teams there.
I don't see it. I don't see it.
Well, to me, it's an injustice that you wouldn't send. And by the way, if Oregon beats Washington, I would take Washington over your Ohio State Buckeyes, who didn't even make its championship game and lost head-to-head to Michigan. At least you would have a split between Michigan and because you have a split between Washington and Oregon. So that would require a rubber match, whereas there is no available rubber match for Michigan and Ohio State to be played. And you lost in the big spot. Once again, we saw that result. I think Ohio State.
But then you give Oregon the benefit of the doubt what Washington got because Oregon got to play them in a neutral site. Ohio State played them.
I have to go off of the evidence that I have available to me. The Big Ten does not provide an Ohio State-Michigan rematch. The Pac-12 did. It's going to give me the evidence that I would need that if Oregon sneaks past Washington, both of those teams are worthy in a mighty conference. Just because it's not in the SEC or Big Ten doesn't make the Pac-12 completely irrelevant. I think the issue is that the committee, along with its network partners, is incented right now to not send a Pac-12 team or celebrate the Pac-12, which is about to dissolve. Likewise, I think they don't want, even though they probably are not discussing whether or not the ratings would be bad if Florida State with a backup QB in there. I think they know deep down that it's not going to do well. They want to send Nick Saban and Bama there if they can. They want to send Ohio State.
That you owe me $100. I think that's what's going on right now.
It's true.
I just think, so if everything plays out, because honestly, I don't know about Texas. Texas, they have a win over Alabama. Texas win over Alabama should also help Texas. Alabama hasn't done anything to jump Texas. So even if they beat Georgia, I still don't feel like that's enough to jump Texas.
Hey, spoiler alert. If Alabama beats Georgia, they are absolutely, positively 100% going to go to the Final Four.
I just don't know yet because Alabama right now.
I'm here to know for both of us. That will definitely happen.
All right, so now we have a committee member in the chat. All right, cool. I appreciate me in the podcast. All right, that's cool. If that's the case.
Do you really think they wouldn't send Nick Saban's Alabama Crimson Tide to the Final Four if they knock off the defending national champion Georgia? Of course they would.
So if that's the case, what will be the rankings? Michigan will be 1. Who will be 2?
I guess that would make Michigan. Well, if Oregon wins, it is kind of weird stuff. Washington, a lot of people have assumed is dead in the water because of how they've played since the Oregon game and how the Ducks have looked since the Huskies game. Oregon is the better team. But if Washington can pull what now stands as an upset, again, I think that Washington obviously is going to go. Oregon's out. That opens a spot there. I think you can make a case that Oregon beating Washington allows for both Pac-12 teams to go. I don't think it's going to go that way.
That is definitely not happening.
Not on justice, based on that the committee doesn't want to celebrate the Pac-12, which is about to get washed off forever.
No, it's just Michigan won. I'm still trying to figure out who's 2 for you.
So, okay, in that scenario, if Washington won, they would be the 2 seed. They would be 13-0.
Yeah, so Washington's 2. Then who's 3? Alabama, then 4 is Georgia?
Yeah, they wouldn't rematch Bama and Georgia 2 and 3. So they would put probably, I would guess, Georgia in the 4 slot. No, they would want the juiciest game.
They're going to have Michigan versus Georgia and then Alabama versus Washington. They're not going to do that. That's not happening. It's not happening.
Okay, maybe.
I think Alabama can win. I still don't think Alabama will go. I think Texas will go in over Alabama.
Okay. Either way, what needs to happen is Florida State needs to lose to Louisville in all likelihood to create the Texas and Ohio State and loser of Washington, if Washington loses scenario, that's when you would get your mess. I know a lot of people are predicting Louisville to pull that upset so that we get this little bit of chaos. All right, I'm moving on to the NFL MVP conversation, and it's a good one. And as you know, it's become an award for the QB with the best stats or who is on the best team. This year, that could be Brock Purdy, but he's not in the top 5 of the betting odds. If he outplays the current leader, Jalen Hurts, this weekend, though, I think that's got a real chance of changing, maybe not even for Brock Purdy. How say you? Right now, Jalen Hurts in front of this game against the Niners is your favorite at plus 140. Patrick Mahomes obviously is going to make the board when you're talking about most valuable player, plus 350. Then Lamar Jackson's 5-1, 2 is 8-1. So is Dak Prescott. He can get back in the race with a victory against the Eagles himself next week. Brock Purdy's there at 16-1. I think it's CMC, though, not Brock Purdy. How say you? 5-0.
Honestly, I think if the Eagles continue to win games, it doesn't matter if they win by the tush push or if they win by 50 points. I think Jalen Hurts is going to win the MVP this season. I hope he wins the MVP because I have him on my fantasy team. So, but if he doesn't win, I hope Dak wins because he's on my fantasy team. But when you really think about it, I think that this reward to me.
You have Hurts and Dak? What kind of fantasy league is this?
No, it's 2 different fantasy teams. It's 2 different fantasy teams. I have Mahomes in the other league with Blue Duck, but unfortunately, I'm losing that league, so it really doesn't matter. So, but when you really think about this league, to me, it's frustrating sometimes because if you look at CMC or you're looking at Tyreek Hill, they're the catalyst for why those teams are running the way they're running. Brock Purdy, you seen when he loses a sliver of talent over there, he's a whole different quarterback. So, but when you see, but you can also say the same thing when it comes to Jalen Hurts or when it comes to Dak. But when you look at Patrick Mahomes, everybody's talking about the lack of receivers he has, and he still is in the MVP conversation. He's like the one true player like Tyreek Hill or Christian McCaffrey based off of what I do is why I'm in the MVP conversation. And everybody else is kind of a collective of everybody else. So I think Jalen Hurts is going to win. I don't think Brock Purdy can win because he has way too much resources over there compared to everybody else. And the Eagles are 9-1, and they deserve to be the best team in the league because they win it every single week.
Well, Rex Ryan said it earlier in the week that clearly, in hindsight, the Patriots dynasty is owed to Tom Brady, not Bill Belichick. And I think that was a thing that you could see with the high-end football teams in the 21st century, that if you had a special quarterback, whether it was Brady or Peyton or Roethlisberger or Breeze or Rodgers and a small handful of other guys, I think we have now transferred those magic powers to drag a mediocre roster to playoff success. And we look at guys like Josh Allen and Justin Herbert and beyond, and if you really take a close look at it, what are they dragging them to? The team is consistently pretty good. Josh Allen can perform superhero deeds, but it's not enough to drag his team to the top of the AFC standings. Same is true for Justin Herbert, and so it goes. And Jalen Hurts and Dak Prescott, I think it's an interesting thought experiment. What if you traded those two guys? Would Dak not thrive in the Philly situation? Of course he would. I think it's time and I think that the voters want to wash that stink of like, you always just give it to the best quarterback. I think they want to give it to a non-QB. That's why I'm bullish on CMC, especially because everyone wants to self-validate about missing Brock Purdy. No one saw Brock Purdy coming, so people aren't excited to vote for the Cinderella story. They want to be able to say, yeah, a lot of people could do what Purdy's doing. The real key to the Niners' offensive success is CMC. Let's move on, though. While we were off for the holiday, it was a holiday of sorts in Cincinnati because the Steelers were there, and not just there, but they looked like a pro football team in my estimation, Shazier. They broke from tradition earlier in the week. They fired Matt Canada, and my gut and my eyes and my heart are telling me that they're happy that they moved on from Matt Canada. What a stunner. I almost feel bad for Matt Canada. The story of 400 yards in a game and his inability to reach that, the Steelers offense, the first game that he's out, they hit 400, wild stuff. How say you?
I definitely feel like it's wild. And I was listening to Tony Dungy's book, and it's called Mentor Leaders. And it kind of made me hit a point why I see why Coach Tomlin didn't probably fire him sooner than most people did. And because when you look at Coach Tomlin's leadership style, it's very similar to Tony Dungy's. And when it came to firing people when other people want them to be fired, sometimes wasn't the best decision for the team because it brings down the morale, but sometimes when you need to do it, you have to do it and things like that. So when I started listening to the book, it kind of made me think about why he probably held him for so long and not let everybody else influence him. But when you think about how this team played, the first game that he was out, I felt that it was more balanced. So the Pittsburgh Steelers have two guys that are over the game plan. They have the quarterback coach, Sullivan, and then they also have Faulkner, who is considered the offensive coordinator. So one develops the game plan and the other one calls the plays. So when you have two people going back and forth with each other, saying this works, that works, I'm looking at this, I'm looking at that. To me, I feel like it really helped helped the offense understand, hey, from two different perspectives, let's try this, let's try that. And we've seen how it was able to perform a lot better. Matt Canada, obviously with Kenny last year and at the beginning of this year, he had a lot of turnovers. He was turnover prone a little bit. So Matt Canada and Coach Tomlin, they probably came up with a conversation. Hey, let's not be too aggressive. Make sure we not turn over the ball. We have a really solid defense. We're going to play field position. I feel like the Steelers did that this game, but they still were able to be aggressive because they had Pat Freiermuth, who was a top 5 tight end before he got hurt in last year. And then he came back this year, and you seen when he came back in this game, they were able to attack the middle of the field. That's something that we weren't able to do a lot. But then we also attacked the outside, so the outside hashes. So we were throwing very conservative passes, or you could say they're risky passes, but they didn't have as much danger to them as if, in earlier routes and other type of combinations. So to me, I just felt like they had a really good game plan. And I think two minds is always better than one when it comes to seeing what can help on the field. Okay,
that's fine. The fundamental difference was the use of 3 tight ends, a lot of offensive snaps with 3 tight ends on the field for the Steelers. But beyond all that, the playbook doesn't really change. So, what happens? Does Sullivan say to Pickett, hey, let it rip, kid? Ike Taylor, tied into the Steelers organization, said exactly that's all Pickett needs to start doing is to let it fly a little bit more and not worry so much. And I do think there is something to that. But is that a message that Tomlin, the new OC, or otherwise, that Pickett received? Or, hey, target Freiermuth more. We don't throw to the tight end ever. Let's change that this week. Because as I say, the playbook was still the playbook from week to week, right?
Yeah, the playbook is still the playbook, but the playbook also has a lot of playbooks have almost 100 plays in them. They have a lot of plays in them, or sometimes even more than that. It could be up to 400 plays in them. So when it comes to deciding plays and picking the plays, when you say let it rip, you also have to call a play to let it rip. So
sure.
So Canada could have been calling shorter concepts, calling plays that his first read wasn't the guy down the middle of the field. It could have been more of the 5-yard routes or something like that. And then also at the beginning of the season, we weren't able to run the ball that well. The last few games, we've been running the ball a lot better. So
that's a major difference. Absolutely. That the run game coming on the last month has been a major factor. And even if Matt Canada were still the offensive coordinator, I would remain fairly optimistic about where the Steelers team is headed with the return of Minkah Fitzpatrick and their ability to run the ball. If they're going to open up the offense a little bit more, all the better.
Yeah, but I think when it comes to the combination of play calls, you can also say, hey, let it rip, but be careful. If you see a dude double, don't throw that route. If you see too high and we have Pat going down the middle of the seam, down the middle of the defense, hey, throw it to Pat. I know that's a contested catch, but it's also you have two guys closing in instead of somebody literally sitting right over top of him. So you can let it rip, but you also have to call plays so you're comfortable. Your quarterback feels comfortable letting it rip. Besides, you're running a bunch of drag routes, you're running hitch routes, you're running, you don't run a lot of crossing routes, you run a lot of corner routes and things like that. It's harder to let it rip because if you don't throw an accurate pass over there, that's an interception or you're trying to throw to multiple levels. And I feel like they did a better job of understanding what Kenny likes to do and mixing it up like that.
You're pretty close with a lot of the guys in that locker room with the coaching staff and otherwise. I mean, and then you hear acrimony. Minkah Fitzpatrick and Deontay Johnson almost came to blows just a couple of weeks ago. And maybe that's the reason why, beyond the development or lack thereof of Pickett, why Tomlin finally decided to move on from Canada. There was a sense of losing the locker room and all of that. Is there a sunnier disposition by your estimation now? Is there addition by subtraction kind of vibe? That's certainly what it feels like, but maybe that's results based. A lot of the cynics out there will point to the fact, and rightly so. Yeah, the Steelers' offense looked a lot different. They still only scored 16 points. Do you feel like there's a better vibe today than there was 2 weeks ago?
So I actually seen Cam today, which is crazy. But I didn't really talk to
who?
Cam Hayward. I didn't actually talk to him. Yeah. I didn't talk to him about, the team or anything like that. But when I did talk to the team, a lot of times when we talked, it was more about, hey, just because Canada's gone, that's not one person doesn't fix the problem, because at the end of the day, they still only scored 16 points. They got in the red zone 4 times, they only scored once. But if you really think about this team this whole season, they haven't been in the red zone that much. So just practice, they have to get more practice down there so they understand what play calls to run and things like that. But I do feel just from looking at the team, it seemed like they're having fun. It seemed like even on social media posts that they're in a good mood. So just when you have a team that believe in each other, and a team that feels that things are going to go in the right direction, you always have a better chance of winning. But when you have people on your team that don't think that, man, I don't believe in the play calls they're running, I don't believe in the concepts that we're running, that's when it's a lot harder for you to have a successful team. Because imagine going out there every single day and not believing on what your teammate can do or what your coach is going to call. If you don't go out there with belief in what you have to do, you're never going to be successful. So I just think that with this team, they seen a change of pace, a change of face, and that could bring a little bit of energy to the team.
Good stuff there, Shazier. It was kind of like one of those 10-minute, 15-play kind of drives. Now let's pace it up a little bit with the nickel package. We're getting into it. Fast action. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after this break. All right, back with more hot topics from the NFL on Gridiron Gut Check. Let's jump right in, shall we, Shazier? Quick hitters, time to roll. 5 questions, 5 answers. Are you ready?
Let's get it.
All right, C.J. Stroud has DeMeco Ryans. Bryce Young had Frank Reich until he was fired on Monday. How much credit or blame for where these two rookies are belongs to their coaches, and how much is just it all about C.J. being something special?
I think it's a combination of the coaches and the players. I feel that the scheme that C.J.'s in, the coaches really believe in him. They really think that he is the guy, and you see that in the style of play. His coaches, the head coach, even in press conferences say, we believe in CJ. We're going to put the ball in his hands. We know that he's going to lead his team into victory. When you watch Frank Reich in this Panthers team, first of all, the Panthers don't have any O-line. They don't have that many weapons. So it's already a really tough position that he's in. But then also, when you go back and look at things in the media or just go back and hear sound bites from Frank Reich, I don't even know if he believed in Bryce as much when they first even drafted him. So when you're coaching up somebody that doesn't really fit the style of play that you're hoping for, and you don't have the best team around them, I think that's a lot harder of a situation. So for Bryce, he's definitely going to need somebody to come in there that really is a coach that understands what his ability is, understands his style of play. And I think that can really change things up. But he's going to need somebody that believe in him like the Texans believe in CJ Stroud.
Well, it's obviously a lousy spot now because of ownership. And what they should do, which they won't, obviously, is trade Bryce Young to a team that's a little further along in terms of overall roster, because that roster is doing Bryce Young no favors, and he is not a guy who can overcome that because of his diminutive stature and all the rest of it. He is not somebody who can Cam Newton or Josh Allen his way around the deficiencies on the offensive lines. They should try to move on for him. Obviously, they're not going to. Jordan Love led the Packers to an upset win over the Lions on Thanksgiving. Could Love be the guy in Green Bay?
When you go back and look at Jordan Love and Aaron Rodgers when they first started, everybody's like, oh man, Jordan Love doesn't look the piece, this and that. His stats and Aaron Rodgers' stats are damn near identical. Aaron Rodgers, 5 for 6. Jordan Love, 5 for 6. Pass yards per game, 236. Jordan Love, 236. Aaron Rodgers, 17 touchdowns, 9 picks. Jordan Love, 19 touchdowns, 10 picks. This man, Aaron Rodgers, is going to go down as one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game of football. He has, 4 or 5 Super Bowls? Wrong. MVPs? Man, I think we just have to give Jordan Love time because he might be the next up-and-coming quarterback that Green Bay needed, just like they had with Brett Favre, like they had with Aaron Rodgers. And they might have found another one with Jordan Love because he's starting to figure things out. So as they continue to figure things out, continue to figure out what type of player he is, man, I think that at NFC North, they're going to have a lot of trouble with him. Not the end of this year, but probably next year for sure.
Oh, the sunk costs where Jordan Love, and it's not just in terms of money. They have invested their reputations in Jordan Love, has the brain trust in Green Bay. There's no chance they're moving on from him, even if it drags them down with him. They got to stick with Jordan Love at this point, at least through next year. Shazier, the Patriots missed a field goal to lose to the Giants, basically ensuring a top 2 pick in next year's draft and hopefully a QB of the future. The missed kick was so fortuitous for Pats fans. It's almost believable that they did it on purpose. What do you, Shazier, think? Are any NFL teams out there purposely losing games?
So when it comes to losing games, players don't care what draft pick that they get. But coaches and front office, they can definitely lose games on purpose with just how they start positioning who plays in the certain games. When you start putting Bailey Zappi in instead of Mac Jones, and when you start putting other pieces in when another guy should normally be starting, that's when you're like, hey, hold up, man. Like, we're not putting the best product out there to win this football game. Because if you think about Mac Jones, he might not be the guy, but he's not the guy. No, he's not the guy. But there's other guys that are probably serviceable more than Bailey Zappi that can help them win games. But they're putting in Bailey Zappi. So to me, players don't care as much when it comes to winning and losing. I mean, they care about winning and losing, but draft picks, it doesn't really matter. I remember when I had a story with Joe Hayden. And Joe just came to Pittsburgh Steelers, and we out at dinner, and he seen that the Steelers were the number 1 team on the division, and he was like, "Man, like this is crazy," because it was like around this time of the year. He was like, "Man, it's crazy. I'm gonna be honest with y'all boys. Like this was the year I got hurt." He was like, "Man, this is the first time that I ever seen that the team that I was on was winning the division this late into the season." It's like right now, man, normally, it literally snowed in Pittsburgh today. He was like, right now, in this time of the year, I'm normally thinking about sending my cars back to California because that's where he lived. So it was like, and he's not even saying like, man, I hate winning or losing, but it's like, he already understands his team's on the bottom of the division. In his head, he's already probably like, I'm not going to make it to the playoffs. You're still playing because at the end of the day, you have a reputation and you still care. You know, if you have a situation when it's 10-10, you're still trying to win that game. But when it comes to, we need to lose this game because we can get Caleb Williams, most players don't give 2 damns about that. Like, they don't care about Caleb Williams coming to our team. I'm trying to win this game. I'm trying to show everybody that I'm still good enough to keep playing. But it also sucks losing.
Of course, yes. From the front office, you can tank games. Players are not out there to lay down for anybody and take a dive as you see in movies. I do think the Giants have tried to do that with Tommy DeVito, and he's gone and mucked up their plans by winning 2 in a row. Tommy DeVito. Hey, in my fantasy league, I picked up Rashee Rice, the Chiefs rookie receiver out of SMU. Then he had 8 catches for 107 and a touchdown in Vegas. Rice could be a league winner for me, but also for the Chiefs. How say you, 5-0?
Man, Rice got drafted early by the Chiefs. They already knew that they were losing some pieces in Juju. They lost Hartman, obviously, he just came back to them.
Kadarius Toney hasn't panned out. Right.
Toney hasn't panned out. He played well. Scott Moore, he's just been playing average. So they drafted him, projecting him to play a decent amount. So with Patrick Mahomes, if he sees that he has a young guy that he can really grow and develop, and this guy is actually dedicated to winning. So if he spends time with Patrick, if he spends time with Travis, gets into the jug machine and show that he can catch the ball consistently, I can definitely see this kid blowing up because he's a young guy. Pat needs somebody that he can depend on, and he hasn't had anybody that he can depend on the last few weeks. So he had a big game this week. Let's just see if he can do it again. If he can start doing this 2-3 times in a row, the NFL is going to have a serious problem on their hands, because if Patrick finds another guy that he can build a relationship like a Travis Kelce or a Tyreek Hill, man, I'm tired of watching the Chiefs win championships. But hey, Patrick Mahomes, he's going to be on another one.
Same thing with that KCD really coming on and playing a more prominent role. Historically, the Jets have pulled the trigger on firing underperforming coaches quickly. Is Tim Boyle the last straw for Bob Saleh? Will he be there to see Aaron Rodgers in 2024? How about Joe Douglas, too?
For Rob Saleh, man, it's just been a really tough situation because they all banked on Aaron Rodgers this year. And they all thought about, hey, we're about to have a good season. We have Aaron Rodgers. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. He got hurt within 30 seconds of their first game of their career in New Jersey. So to me, it depends on how, touchy the Jets ownership is going to be. If they went into this season like, hey, we lost Aaron, boom, like we got to figure something out, then I think that he will get another chance when Aaron comes back. But if they're going to be like, hey, you haven't got it done, we're tired of this, you need to get up out of there. But I think it's just tough, man. They have a backup quarterback from literally game one. It's hard to win a championship when you have a backup quarterback from game one.
I know, but people always get awfully glib about wait till next year and everything else. When the losses really start to stack up on you, it is hard to justify. If you're like you say, if you have a hair trigger finger there over the button, like a lot of owners do in pro sports, big time $1 billion business, they'll cut the head off quick and it'll be someone else's problem to fix if Bob Saleh doesn't survive. I do think I agree with you, though. I think they give him a little bit of grace, Joe Douglas, too, for to run back what they thought 23 was going to be. They'll try to do it in 24. I don't think it's going to work out because Aaron Rodgers will officially be old.
When you look at that team, their defense is there. They have the receivers. Sure. They have the running back. They have literally everything, but the most important position in football. So, and Zach Wilson,
going to be awfully old when he gets back.
He's going to be awfully old, but he's also he won an MVP last year. Or the year before last.
I understand.
Was it last year or the year before last?
He'll also be 40.
He'll also be 40, but if he doesn't get hit that often, I think they have a solid chance. I'm not saying they're going to win a championship, but I think they can get to the playoffs and at least make people in New York feel a little bit better about themselves.
Got in his avocado shakes that Tom Brady will teach him how to make. He'll mix in a little of the horse paste. Be right as rain. All right, that's it for this episode of Gridiron Gut Check.
Hey, so make sure to follow, rate, and review the show on wherever you're listening. Check us out on YouTube on the Wondery channel. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can see every episode. See you all next week.